that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons, your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also my manservant and my servants, I will pour out my spirit in those days. So looking at this text, definitely the word afterward refers to the last days. The word afterward refers to end times. It refers to the times that we have seen already fulfilling, how God begins to multiply means by which He can speak today in our time and right through to the last days. There was a time in our history, or in the history of this world, when there were no prophets. So it should not surprise us when we have no living prophet. After Ellen White died, after some prophets in the Bible died, people were wondering, well, is God still with us? Why isn't He sending a prophet? And remember, with prophets, it was not as it is with priests and kings, whereas one king dies, another king is anointed immediately to take over. With prophets, they depended on God. It was God who decides when to send a prophet, and when God decides, then it would be His prerogative also to give that person his own messages. So here we are getting an indication that God will still continue up to the last days to send a prophet. There was a period of 400 years between the testaments. In history, there are 400 years between the testaments. And during this 400-year period, we learn that there were no prophets. It was a silent period when it comes to prophecy and prophets, living prophets. But God had already spoken in the past. So His word had been recorded. His word was in the hands of the people. And all that was needed was for people to follow what God had already given. And today, we don't really have a living prophet, but we have so much that God has given us in His word. This is a library of prophecies, written, 66 books written by a number of prophets who were inspired by God. And so Ellen White came afterwards, tested, proven. We'll come to that in shortly. And so we see today, with no living prophet, that we have a lot of wealth, treasures of information that God has shared with us, messages that are so important and relevant to our time. So as we look at the gift of prophecy in these past times, it is a gift that knows no boundaries. No boundaries of age, no boundaries of gender, no boundaries of status. God called people as He saw fit, as they were willing. God called them and appointed them to be His spokespersons. So we have young prophets like Samuel, who came onto the scene with a completely young mind. As you know the story of Samuel in 1 Samuel chapter 3 verse 7. We won't read that, but in that story we see a young person who was being called by God as a prophet. And in 2 Chronicles chapter 34 is a story of a young king, but then he consults a prophetess which means, and there were men who were prophets at the time, but he decides to consult a prophetess for a word from the Lord. And then in Exodus, Moses, coming from an Egyptian background of training and mentoring for leadership in that context, and prepares him for his work. So right throughout the Bible, we see God using and working with people in these different contexts. And I want us to read Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. And the text is a very important text for especially us as Seventh-day Adventists. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So here we have a clear identification of God's people in the last days. And these people are keeping God's commandments. These people have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And this testimony of Jesus Christ in Revelation chapter 19, verse 10, is explained and expounded a little bit further, that it is the spirit of prophecy. So this last day church, this remnant church, that the dragon is very much